right, Luke, we're doing somewhat of a shorter market overview here today, you and I, because there's a stock here that's gone up 3 times, 4 times, depending on when you're watching this or where it's going to close on Friday. And we actually got the CEO to talk to him, so that's going to be coming later on. But first, starting with a shorter market overview here. That company, by the way, was SRQ Resources. They made a technical discovery, is what they call it. Is it an economic discovery? Is it going to work? Do they need money? All these things we're going to discuss with Marc-Antoine later on in a conversation. In the meantime, though, there's a couple of stories to talk about. Well, I really only see one company, well, two maybe, because we talked about Copper Fox before. But your list starts with Great Quest Fertilizers, which yeah, sure, it went up, 150% or whatever, again, depending on when you're watching this and how it closes on Friday. But it's just $50,000 of volume. It's a market cap is basically zero. It's fertilizers. I don't even know if I want to know about it. Do I?
Yeah, this is. I think no podcast on earth would talk about Great Quest Fertilizer, but it's probably one of my favorite topics to look at these small little companies and find a little bit of value in there. And we laugh about it, but it's actually, I think, quite an interesting story. This is a $1 million company. Well, before the move this week, I was trying to buy it, and I will explain in a minute why it didn't succeed, because it was in a trading halt and my discount broker didn't let me place a bid just before the opening. Otherwise, I would have been in at 1.5 cents and a bid at 2, but that didn't happen. So I'm talking without a position here. But I noticed a couple of months ago that they made a deal with Sullivan Mining Capital, which is, well, let me not go too far into their story, but they have bought a uranium property since, and but they acquired a Namibian project early last year, and they flipped it to Great Quest pretty quickly. And when you read a little bit more about those licenses, you get the impression that there's more than just a couple of licenses. There's an idea behind it. I don't know enough about it yet. I decided not to call the management team, which is sometimes by on purpose, because I don't want them to know yet that I'm trying to buy the stock. So they were buying these licenses from Sullivan Mining Capital, went into a trading halt because the deal price was exceeding their financial capabilities at the time. And recently the management team of Great Quest gave a loan, a $500,000 loan to the company to close the deal, and that gave the TSX fee the well, allowed them to release the trading halt again and let it trade and let them close the deal soon. But a couple of things interest me about Great Quest, and this is what I look for in companies. This is a company with people on board like John Clark, and it's interesting to know as much people, as many people you can know in this business, especially ones that have performed in a certain way. And John Clark was the guy behind Nefson, who made the Bisha discovery. Of course, he was not alone. He had a field team, and I mean, there were many people involved, but he was the chairman and the CEO at the time, I believe, and since 1997. It has been in many good place since, and is a really respected geologist and company leader. And if you know that such a person is behind it, you also can assume normally, and that's what I do, I assume that that what they buy is not just to promote Namibian copper or Namibian gold. They buy things for a reason. And when a company is a $1 million company and the management team is loaning $500,000, I guess they will pay themselves back in shares at some point. Well, it at least gives them a reason to make it work, because if you give a loan, I mean, you have to pay it back, so you have to get a financing done, or you have to give yourself shares, but those shares are not worth anything if you don't make it work. So it gives them an incentive at least to make it work. So if I just layer on top of each other $1 million market cap with a guy like John Clark behind it, and a couple of other people, I think, that have a bit of a history, but you can look into them yourself. I'm not going to talk about this stock too long. And they have also a big phosphate project in Mali, of all places, which some people believe is a really good deposit in the wrong place, but still a 500 million NPV project. And at those points in time where I think the management team has a real incentive because they have given that loan, so either they have to get it back or they have to return it into shares. In other words, they have to finance and make it work for the company, at least short term. I think that those entries are quite low risk in terms of this micro cap world being low risk, which is of course not the case. But that's why I'm bidding 1.5 cent for these type of stocks, and it would have been a good idea, but I didn't get those shares, and right now it's 50% higher. I'm not sure if they're going to do a rollback. That's something I always keep in consideration. What if they roll it back 1 to 10? Would it still be interesting? Because if you're paying 1.5 cents, it would become 15 cents. So they could easily let it drop another 5 cents to 10 and then do a financing. So I think if you buy these small stocks, you have to consider rollbacks and ability to finance and who are behind it, all those typical things. But what I want to emphasize is that these small companies sometimes really offer an entry opportunity for something that could become way bigger than the current 2 million market cap. But I'm also for cheap stock. So I'm not rushing in right now at 2.5 cents because of that potential rollback. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. So now I'm going to wait a little bit and see what they're going to do. But as long as you get a really cheap entry, I think you can, in a way, de-risk your speculation or investment a little bit in these type of stories.
Yeah, as in, and so when you say lower risk for micro cap, that's the lower risk means that you lose your money and your sanity, but then higher risk means you lose your money and your sanity and potentially your wife. So that's how low of a risk this is. That which is to say, not a lot. But also, I'm kind of getting confused here. I'm trying to go through their website. I see a gold project in Mali too.
That's
So
right.
the Sunuku gold project
Yeah,
is what
as
it's.
well.
I like that green stone belt. Obviously, a little bit biased here, but
Yeah,
yeah,
they have been looking for gold in Africa for a long time, also already in the 90s and in the early 2000s. So they know where to look. So I think when team comes together with a very small market cap for good reasons, there was nothing exciting about Great Quest Fertilizer. But this seems to me as a, without even talking to the company, as a sort of a rebranding type company where they will buy a couple of new licenses, where the new strategic plan with a new corporate focus, and these things nobody talks about until they change their website, change the deck, promote what they have bought, and tell what is within those licenses. And in the first instance, when I buy at 1.5 cents, I can almost buy blind. I don't really care yet. If I find out in 3 months from now that I don't like the idea, I may still be able to sell at 2 or 3 cents. That's often my type of playing these things. And sometimes I prefer to do it in a way blind without calling the company, because if I get a bit of a relation, I feel also a level of, maybe a level of responsibility if you are buying quite a bit of stock. And of course, you shouldn't feel like that in a junior mining space, but I still do. If you get to, a friendly relation with people, um, I'm treating it as a trade initially. And if I like it enough, then that becomes an investment, and then maybe it's a longer term thing. And that's
but
how I
also
look at these type of things.
I hope you're not buying a lot of stock and stuff like this. Like position sizing, I suppose, comes to mind here because getting out is also not as easy. Because if you might try and get out at 2 cents, but if this thing goes up 150% on 50,000 bucks, then it can go down just as easily. And if you have to sell a $50,000 position, if that's the size of if you're taking a large position to this, then you're crashing your own bike.
Well,
Um,
if you want to get a certain, at some point in these small companies, you have a bit of an idea. Okay, I can get with my portfolio into that level of ownership, and let's just assume that I would take a percent. A percent of this company would be let me think, $15,000. So I can own a percent of this company for $15,000, or 1.5, 2% for a bit more, and then I will assume, I'm pretty sure they will dilute me a bit because they have loans outstanding and things. So that, let's assume that becomes a percent or maybe 0.5%. But they can get, at that point, they have the company cleaned up. And of course, I take comfort by the team. I'm not just buying $2 million companies because it's a $2 million company. If people like John Clark are in this business, and I've met him once, but I've read about him, I mean, his work a lot, then you get a bit of comfort. Why would he join a $2 million company, finance it with a loan, buy a new project in Namibia after being in this business for 25 years? And I guess he doesn't need it anymore financially. That gives me enough confidence to buy that $15,000 or $20,000 position that gives you a 1 or 2%. And I'm not waiting. I didn't get the position, but I would just put it somewhere, don't forget about it, and leave it there for a year or 2 years or 3 years. If it becomes a longer term thing, or if it rises too quickly, it goes to 10 cents. Well, you could still sell it, consider to sell it. So for me, these entries with good teams, and even if they roll it back, I think it could have been a good entry at 1.5 cents.
Yeah.
And it's not just to promote or say a lot about Great Quest. I just like these type of companies where you get the comfort not necessarily out of the project, but because of the circumstances. And I can see it by the corporate actions, like a loan, a financing, a rollback, the market cap, the share structure. What have they done in the past? I can almost buy without calling the company or looking into the project based on those corporate events lining up to a situation in buying a project. And then you think, okay, in this situation, it's very unlikely that they are not going to promote it and get it going a little bit. And so far, it didn't even move that much. It was just a small bump from 1.5 to 2.5 cents. I was expecting a bit more already, to be honest, but
also dealing with the financial situation is not going to be easy. As you said, I'm looking at the financials in the end of March. They had $170,000 in cash, which is basically negative cash in the capital burning junior space. But they total liabilities. They have a loan. They have money is due to the related party. There's account payables. It's over $1.5 million in liability. So dealing with this, you're gonna what you really if you ever buy something like that, and that's not why we're talking about this thing specifically. I think we're mostly using it as an example. But I suppose if you ever buy something like this, you're either buying it because you think you have an edge on the rocks and understand the geology, something we've talked about, that something that you don't particularly agree with, or because you know that the team behind it is what you're mentioning here is going to fix this. That's sort of like you're putting your trust into them, saying like, okay, they're moving something around. The financial situation is challenging. Whatever they have in the company right now clearly is valued at practically zero, so the market doesn't care about it. But they're going to fix it in one way or another. So that's really what you're investing in when you buy these type of things. Is that right?
Yeah, you want to see a couple of signals that it is in the process of changing or fixing. I don't mind. Well, it's an important thing to consider if they have a lot of payables, but often those payables are to the officers themselves, and then they probably give themselves a lot of stock for it. And you could say, yeah, they give themselves cheap stock, so why should I pay maybe 50% more in the market? But if they give themselves so much stock worth $500,000 or $1 million of this cheap paper, they cannot sell it. So the only way for them to then make it work for them, for those shares at least, is to do something with it, because they cannot sell at 2 cents right now and just be done with it.
But it's free shares in the end. I mean, they're giving it to themselves for supposed services. But this thing was halted, so I don't know how much of a services that was going on. And so it's $1 million, give or take. I think it's $800,000 to related parties. If you pay that in shares, that's 50% dilution. Well, a little bit less, but
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah,
dilution that you have
but
to
why
account
would
for.
you give yourself shares? Why would you even be involved with the company and be busy with it? Well, busy, you don't know if they are busy with it, but I mean, it's a level of who are involved. If you don't know the people at all and you have no history on them, I would not do this strategy. If you have the people and you think, okay, these people are capable, they have done it more than one time in this spot with this sort of situation, that's one. Then you think about share structure a little bit. I want to see them positioned. If they are not positioned yet, I want to make sure, like, how are they going to position themselves in a financing or in a debt settlement? Or I want to make sure that the management team is positioned. Otherwise, there's not enough incentive for them to make it work for them and not for me. So I think you want to see, the management team, that you are comfortable with that. You want to see them positioned, or you need to see a way that they get positioned. For example, a financing that gets announced. You want to see a catalyst. Well, in this case, they have new projects. Why would you buy a new project if you're not going to do something with it? So there's a couple of factors on top of each other. In this case, there's one insider who owns 7 million shares. There's one insider who left and sold 7 million shares in one transaction. So that probably went to someone who's also long-term. So there seems to be quite a bit of loyal shareholding in this company. I was estimated as being 40 to 50%, just a rough estimation from my side, in a stock like this, which became boring long time ago. So anyone who's still left is typically there for a little bit longer time. You're not going to wait 5, 6, 7 years and then sell typically at a 50% up move in a tiny stock like this. Nobody's making money yet, I think. So I think everybody who's still in the stock is aware of this is, just getting started again, in my
I think the
opinion.
loan provider is making money because it's at a 20% interest rate as far as I can see on here. So yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen somebody say that last week about another stock as well. And yes, 20% is a lot. I don't think that these loans, people like this are not going to give $500,000 loan to make, I guess, $30,000 a year. And who's going to pay the $30,000 or $40,000 back to them? I mean, they need to finance, they need to get it going. Otherwise, they will never get the loan back. Of course, maybe then they would try to get the project in return, if the loan is secured. I don't even think the loan is secured in this case. But even if it was, no, it is not. It's not secured. So,
Oh, okay,
so
I
what's
can
what's
see.
their what's their
I'm
game
just I'm
with
just
the loan?
generally I know I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical. That's
Hmm.
first time I'm hearing about it just right now. We didn't even discuss this before the conversation, whatever. So that's I'm just trying to whatever do if you want to call it research, do research in real time. So getting a little bit skeptical, but I do like stocks that are free, right? But then looking at the property that they have is 24 square kilometers, which is about as large as an average house in the US. And so they also have the financial situation is not great, but then you're saying about the people. Um, Raising money here is just has to happen creatively, or you're killing the company basically. It'd be actually be good to get an interview with them and see how do you even fix something like that? This could be a good case study. Even just forget the company itself. And
Hmm.
now I think we're talking about it too long, maybe, but just a good case study as to how do you fix it? Do you sell some of the projects and start anew? What happened with the whole thing? Keep the G&E keeps going. You do a finance, or you try to do a loan while halted. No cat. Well, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of question marks, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
maybe
I mean,
maybe
there's yeah,
worth an
yeah, for
interview.
sure. But the land position is bigger. I'm just looking it up here. I mean, one project they bought is 170,000 hectares. The other one, 90,000 hectares. The other one, 45,000 hectares. So they have big projects.
I was talking
It,
about what they used to call the flagship asset
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
Sunuku in
Right.
Mali because
Yeah.
I like that greenstone belt. Mali obviously challenging in West Africa, much more challenging than Cote d'Ivoire. It's not like I'd say something else, but it also actually is true. So that property is just 24 square kilometers, and artisanals on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have also I mean, they have 1.4 million US to finance on this Namibian project within 24 months, which 1.4 million is maybe not a whole lot. It's US, so maybe close to 2 million Canadian for a company that's currently not even, has negative working capital. So I don't think the people, I mean, and I guess, again, the people are important. It's not that I know them personally, it's just that I know their track record. And then I think, okay, people like this buying a new project, big project, with a financing of the expenditure on it over the next 2 years, with a loan indeed. I mean, there's just too much ongoing for me not to think that this is going to be promoted. We'll probably get a new name. They may be at shows in a couple of months' time, and then suddenly everybody understands the story. But I like it to be in there when the story is still a bit unclear. But let's just say that, I mean, those projects had very short descriptions in this news release, but it wouldn't surprise me that they have some very nice, images in the presentation. And if you dress it all if you dress it up very nicely, which every company does on the TSXV, which promotes, then suddenly it looks way more interesting. But people want to see that deck, and if the deck is prepared, then everybody loves it. But
Mm.
this is just, following a trail of news releases over the last 5, 6, 7 years, the share structure, the ownership, the financing, the loan, and just trying to imagine what are they going to do with this. And of course, I could call them. That's what I sometimes do. But in small things like this, I sometimes just take a position because it doesn't have to be very big to have a meaningful percentage in the company, which will be diluted down very quickly. I think there will be probably 50% dilution soon. But even then, a $4 million company doesn't have to be expensive if you will see the slide deck in a couple of months and you think, oh, wow, this slide deck is impressive. This should be a $10 million company. So that's, I think, how these things typically work, especially in a market that's potentially turning for gold.
What do you like about the share structure, by the way? Because I know you pay attention to warrants and stuff like that, and so warrants and options is 30 million. So, and that's what 40% of 40% of the comment. So yeah, it's about what 30 Let's see. Yeah, no, it's a little under 30% from the fully diluted is options and warrants.
I think the warrants are expired. The 30 million warrants they had, I think, expired.
Oh, the website is way outdated. Yeah,
Yeah.
it says February 9th, 2022. So there's no warrants.
No, there's no warrants. There's 80 million shares right now. I think they are, like I said, if things take so long and you have a very, very boring company over many, many years, then everybody who's still in the stock either couldn't get out or doesn't want to get out. Especially, and you also have to consider that this was a $1 million company. So everybody who owns it. It's
Yeah.
divided over at least 10 people. Otherwise, you had filing insiders. And a couple of people are the company themselves. I think there's
Why did
probably
not take it public, private in that case? I mean, if they want to fix this,
no,
they
no,
can.
this is a very typical story. I mean, you see this all the time. I mean, these insiders own probably 20%. Their friends probably own 20%. So I think this 1 million, there's probably $600,000 that is maybe not even tradable because other people own it who like it enough. And then this is just the start of a new thing, in my opinion. And I think if you then buy in at 1.5 cents, you probably have one of the cheapest entries in the last couple of years, and you don't have to wait anymore because the game plan is starting. And this doesn't always work out. I have made these bets and they failed. The project suddenly was cancelled, and they went again into sleep mode for another 5 years. That could happen. And even then, I think the odds are that I'm going to make money at some point with it. I'm assuming that they would roll it back maybe 1 to 5, so that the share structure is really clean. Then the stock is suddenly not 1.5 cents anymore, but 6, 7 cents. Then they finance maybe around that level or higher. Sometimes you see a bit of a run up before financing. You never know how this goes, but you can sort of try to make a couple of scenarios in your mind. Like, what is the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? And with these things, I have found 10 baggers and 20 baggers in a very short period of time. And I found things that completely failed. And then you lose no, you don't lose it necessarily. Maybe you lose 10 or 20% of your $20,000 investment. And I'm just choosing 20,000 because it would be 1% of the company
Yeah.
right now.
This will
So
probably be hard to get it too, because there's again the volume is just nothing. Well, it's been a little bit these last few days, but
and that's why I wanted to be on the opening trade. I saw people bidding. I believe people were bidding for 1 cent or 1.5 cents, and I wanted to just go over it in the last minute. So I was expecting people to stay at that level, and me just bidding 0.5 cent, which is in percentage terms quite a bit over them. And then the first trades took place at 1.5 cents when it opened. The first 600,000 shares, I think, and then it went into 2 cents. I was willing to pay 2 cents, I think, as well. And then 2.5 is a bit too much because of the rollback risk. If they would roll it back 1 to 10, it would become a 25-cent stock, and the price is just a psychological thing. That's not the market cap, but sometimes you see when they roll back and the price is suddenly 25 and they do nothing for a while, that it just goes back to 15 and then they do a financing and then you still have an expensive entry. And that's something you have to consider. So I was thinking about worst case 10 to 1 rollback, and I would still be happy with a 1.5 cent entry in that case.
yeah, this sounds like very typical Luke stuff, like very
Sure.
obscure stuff,
Yeah.
high risk, and then go and understand all that. Yeah.
But
It-
sometimes these obscure things like these are turn into beautiful stories just 4 or 5 months later. But again, if people see the and I'm not sure if it will happen, and that's why I'm sticking my neck out a little bit here. Maybe I look like a fool in 5 months, but I think in a couple of months you see a company with a nice website, a nice slide deck, maybe even presenting at conferences, and everybody suddenly listens and looks at it and thinks, oh wow, Namibia is good, gold is good, copper is good, or they have this thing, this big $500 million project on the side which protects my downside, and people completely like it. And while maybe right now it looks like a piece of garbage. So I'm just trying to paint a picture, like where is this going, and am I willing to put a bit of money in? And I'm not playing these games for a double. Typically, I'm looking for 5 bagger at least if you do these
yeah.
type of speculations.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
everybody is a Luke. That's what I
Right.
tell myself every day. Let's keep it moving though. You have Falcon Metals on here. I'm not. We're not gonna spend a half an hour. I'm not gonna spend a half an hour on because I've got nothing to. No, not much to say. Decent volume. $1 million of volume went up, 69%. Nice. But what else? Anything to mention here?
Yeah, so I can talk for half an hour about a garbage shell, and about this real discovery, I've got nothing nothing to say because I don't know anything about mineral sands. Uh, but I wanted to just put it up here. I saw a discovery. The stock went up 70% this week already, and it's like last year with niobium or 2 years ago when WA1 made the niobium discovery. I I have worked with niobium a little bit in my working career because we needed magnets for a certain technology. But I didn't know anything about mining niobium, the risks with it, and any. So I decided to ignore WA1, which became a multi-bagger. And here you see another stock with mineral sands. I don't know anything about mineral sands, so I'm not touching it. But still intriguing that a company makes a discovery. 26% of, I guess, high grade. I don't even know if it's high grade because I don't know anything about mineral sands. But it's interesting at least. I want to just show it to people who may have more knowledge about it than me. But I'm also always clear that when I don't know about something, then let's not talk about it for half an hour like I do about shell stocks.
Mm. But interesting volume because you
Hmm.
mentioned it. Well, you've noted it at $1 million because the next mover in here is Bravo Mining, famous larger company.
Yeah.
Uh, almost what has it gone up to? Almost $400 million in market cap, and it had less than $1 million of volume. It's up 50 something percent again, depending on when you're watching this, and it's on the back of again technical success. They've intersected what they call ISCG style massive sulfide copper gold mineralization in drill testing. One of their targets, high grade copper, although the intercepts are narrow, it seems like it might be nuggety because they're mentioning that there's a 2.9 meter intercept of 23% copper, 3.6 grams per ton of gold. What do you have you looked more into this? I just know it's a famous company, and which is one of the reasons why I've not paid attention to it. But have you paid attention?
Yeah, a little bit. I was not aware of Bravo until, I mean, 2 years ago or something. Somebody told me that this is a really interesting story. 40% of the company is owned by one person, Luis Azevedo. He has been in the business for a long time. I talked to him last year, and he told me that he knew this project for a long time from his previous more corporate career. And when it became available, and he had, they assembled a team around it, it became a new company and became really popular and also well structured. So that's why you see a stock really trade well and becoming a multi-$100 million company just by buying a project, vending it in, promoting it. It could be great quest, but so they had a really good PGE, or very interesting, let's call it like this, PGE project that was drilled in the 90s already, and they sort of rediscovered it, started working on it, and sometimes companies just repackage things. I think this company is serious about trying to, understand it and look for exploration upside. And what they also did last year is that they did in 2022 they hit a sulfide discovery at their Luanga project, and they were, I think, a bit surprised, or maybe it was sort of a surprise that they found this 2% nickel, 4 grams PGM, and they decided to do a airborne EM, electromagnetic survey, over the entire area, and they found 17 priority targets. And this makes it interesting. If you have such a big deposit already, and it's very well endowed, and you do then new surveys to look for, new discoveries, um, you start basically over again. You start doing EM. They created these high priority targets, and they drilled the first hole this year. And immediately in the first blind drill hole, away from their deposit, they hit 11 meters of 14% copper and 3 grams gold. And then they drilled 50 meters away from it, and they visually see the same thing. And then they tested another anomaly, T6 they call it, I think, and they hit again. So I think visually. So so I think it shows that when you are in a well-endowed district with a team that has money available to do exploration and not just drill their current projects, but also look for other discoveries, which they did and tested. And I guess it also took them a little bit by surprise that they found this style of mineralization. So I think it's a bit of a new discovery here, which they will test. And And I saw the news. I was thinking about buying it, but it was already a $200 million stock at the time, 190, and it did better than expected. It went up 50% because it's a new discovery with, unknown potential. But potential, the potential is there, but unknown the scale of it, and that's what the market excites, I guess. These grades, 11 meters, you call it narrow. Yeah, it's not a valley, 15 meters, but 10, 11 meters at these grades, I think, are certainly a very interesting start.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. This would also be an interesting interview. That's the type of interview that I would like to do and
Mm.
look at more of the rocks. It seems like the angles and the azimuths here are quite variable. I don't know if that's no. What do I know? I should not even talk about these things, but I know that it is. I'm looking at it right now. But I'd just like to, talk about the geological model with them and see how that would work out, how they want to advance it and so on and so forth. But yeah, again, I don't have much um to add here. Yeah, IOCG would check out, I suppose, in that part of the world as well, although they say that's massive sulfides in ultramafic rock, which is it's described as magmatic style of mineralization. Yeah. Anyways, okay. What else? Anything else to add on Bravo? Or do we move to Copper Fox, which apparently is up again this week,
Yeah,
50%. And yeah, if you don't have anything to add on Bravo, I'm surprised again at Copper Fox because I think first time we talked about it, it was up as well. And I mean, I saw there was news, but again, we talked about it back then as well. It was like, is this news actually moving this stock? Like, what's happening here? What is happening this week?
yeah. I think there was initially no news at all, and since then they came with two news releases. Both of them do not really explain this, and I am like you were skeptical on my shell thingy. I'm always skeptical when stocks go up like this on volume, especially these sort of bigger stocks. This is not a major or something, but still, this is not a micro cap either for junior miners in junior mining terms. Um, Going up on this volume, I think something is going on. And the second news release kind of interested me. And of course, now I start speculating. I don't want to go too far with that because maybe we're completely wrong and then we're just saying uh, stupid stuff. But they mentioned that, I mean, their Sombrero project is 2 kilometers from Copper Creek, which is a Faraday copper. And Faraday financed this week with the Lundins again, with Pierre Lassonde, and I just forget the third person, Murray Edwards, I think. So really, Faraday is a really well capitalized company with a big copper project next door to Sombrero. So my speculation today is, and it's just complete guesswork, but maybe there's something going on with this project because they released two news releases. In the first one, I couldn't find anything that explains this big share price move, and in this one, what they say is the mapping program has highlighted several additional geological and alteration features in common with the Copper Creek porphyry copper deposit. The data suggests the center of the buried porphyry system is located to the northeast, and then they go on with some geological explanations. So they are doing mapping work right now. There's no drilling. I was looking for maybe they are drilling and they saw something in the core. I don't think there is any drilling right now. I think they are planning a geophysical survey to test this a little bit more. So the only, if you then just go by the facts, the things that they released pretty quickly after the share price move, this is the only thing I could notice. Like, hey, they refer to Faraday Copper. Faraday is just financed. Could they be negotiating with Faraday to sell this project, perhaps? Could they be merging? Could they? I have a hard time believing that this company went up like this for no reason. And the only thing currently in public domain are these two news releases. Of course, at the same time, copper companies are really doing well. We talked about Corex last week, Midnight Sun. Faraday is doing quite well. World Copper is really going up quickly. Surge Copper is going up. So it is a good market for copper companies, which probably helps. But still, I want to leave this speculation a little bit in our program so that we can come back to it and say, hey, we were right. There was something going on. But more than this, I cannot speculate on. This is just the only thing I noticed in the press release, them naming their neighbor and the significance of what they are finding at Sombrero.
There's one guy on COCA or gal, I don't want to discriminate, saying, "What are the saddest when are these sadists going to give us some real news? So we're not the only ones who are not buying this move only on the. It's really a huge pump and a dump. I mean, it went up to 65 cents. It went up May
Yeah.
16, and now it's down to 29.
And it
Uh,
is a interesting company, of course, because there's a big insider ownership. They have several projects. Some of them already pretty advanced. Some of them, maybe next to Faraday, maybe they want to do a deal with them. I'm just completely speculating, but it's not just a one-trick pony, and we have a good copper market. But indeed, it's very unlikely that a stock would go like this on volume like this if there wasn't anything in the works. Uh, and the only thing I can think of are what's going to move a company like this so quickly. It has to do with M&A. It has to do with discovery. I
hmm,
mean, what is value driving? That are the type of things, I guess, or maybe an investment from a very well-known person. But
yeah.
that's the only three things I can think of that would make a stock like this really go crazy so quickly.
Or maybe it's nothing and it's just weird stuff happen because I mean, the whole situation is weird. Like the share, the if I see a chart like this, I'm probably not interested already. Combined with the share structure, which is a 560 million shares outstanding, which in your words is just an unlimited number of shares outstanding. Uh, so yeah, I don't know. It again, you've brought me only strange situations this week. What's happening?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not the average investor, I guess. Well, I'm not buying Copper Fox, even though maybe it is a good one, maybe not. I don't know. I find it quite interesting.
Hmm,
But I typically try to not own things that everybody talks about, not just to be different, but I feel like, especially the popular ones, there's always, the more people that follow a story, the more expectation there is. And if there's expectation, you can also fill those expectations. If there's no expectation, know how to fill those no expectations, which is probably possible in junior mining. But I think it's difficult to fill expectations in Great Quest because who is expecting anything there? They just need to fix it. So it's sometimes even easier to look at these things because there's so little interest for these names. But you need to see a little bit that where you can make it sort of predictable. Like, okay, I see these things happening. That's why I want to invest, and you need to give it some time. Sometimes so these investments, especially these odd investments, can sometimes take a long time. But that's often where also the most people don't have the time and they want to make a profit tomorrow. And I think if you only have patience for the right reasons, that already brings you halfway sometimes because most people don't have that patience. Of course, trying to get in low and not buy because the thing is going up only.
yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of other things that I'm coming up with. I mean, it takes brains. It takes like you actually have to want to do this, which you do. You're actually interested in diving into these things. And again, as we've spoken before, satellite pictures and whatnot, and all these different things, figuring it out on your own. So you have to be interested in these things for it to work, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean the satellite thing. We talked a little bit about it last time. You just try things, and I don't think satellite images is gonna give me that edge that I need. But I just try things to figure things out. But of course, nothing's better than at some point, especially for longer term investments, to talk to the management team, get to know them, talk regularly. Just know what you're talking about, know the financials, know the risks, know that there's warrants outstanding, know that there's a free trading date upcoming. Just know all the different things that influence these illiquid, not non-revenue, money-grabbing companies. You just need to understand what you own really well, and there's not even that much work. These financials are very easy to understand because there's no revenue. You just have to look at how much money is in the bank and how much they spent on what, um, and what is the history of people, what do they own. It's not very difficult. You just have to be consistent and I think very importantly, rather just miss out on a couple of things than trying to make in the beginning. You sometimes it's painful to miss out on something you looked at and suddenly it's going up. I often just let it go at some point. If it's if I'm not comfortable anymore with the market cap and I think, okay, one drill hole can completely cut this in half, do I want to play that game? Is that a good way of playing the 50-50 game? Yeah, well, I don't even think 50-50. I mean, the odds of them making a discovery are probably 1%, and if they don't, then it goes down 50%. Well, that's not what you should do, I think, because you're not going to make money on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Let's hear from a company that you actually did buy this week. With that being, as I mentioned, SRQ Resources.
Yep, interesting story for sure.
All right, Marc Antoine, to put it in its French. If we were talking same time last week, your stock would have been something like 70%, 65% lower than what it is right now. So this has done a 3x in about a week. It was more than a 3x. It was over 5x at some point. What did you do to rub the stock market gods the right way?
Okay, well, that's a very good question, actually, because it's actually surprised me. The run that we had this week surprised me. The reason why it surprised me is because when I wrote the press release and we issued it on Tuesday, I never thought that it will create such an interest, because that press release is mostly describing geology from the drilling that we just completed. So there's no assay results, but there is a very good description of, in the geological sense, of what we discovered. And it's also showing that one of the sites that we discovered could be the center of a large magmatic intrusive system. So that was mostly the purpose of the press release, was to be able to discuss all of this to other people and having that information public. So I was the first one surprised that actually it was first read by so many people, which was really nice to see. And also that I received so many questions about the geology of that area. So all of this was very nice surprise. And obviously the share price run that we saw was also very welcome. It went up mostly because I believe people understood the geology and understood the principle behind the technical discovery that we just made. It's a technical discovery. It's a technical discovery by the fact that we have discovered a geological environment that has lots of potential. It is not yet an economic discovery, because we still have to drill and to develop in the center of that large intrusive system that we discovered. So that will come next. Well, I hope so. The next phase of work that we're going to do on that project will be to do some downhole geophysics on the borehole number 29, the borehole that actually intersected 735 meters of massive pyroxenite. And for the people that doesn't know exactly what mean pyroxenite is the type of rock associated with a magmatic intrusive system. That means that is the material coming from the mantle. When you have lots of deformation, in geological deformation in an area, that create fluids and that create injection of material from the mantle. And this is the type of material that come from the mantle. And it is usually this type of material that carry the nickel copper mineralization as well. So having discovered 735 meters in a single borehole in the edge of a large gravity targets like the one at target 900 that you see on the presentation, it's actually extremely significant. It's significant by the size of the target, and also significant by the geological meaning of that intersection. Now, that intersection also intersected mineralization at the bottom of the hole. So the last 50 meters of that hole, the hole number 29, is we do have mineralization, disseminated mineralization, and sometimes highly disseminated mineralization over a small length of at a time. But and that mineralization is kind of a pyroxenite, pyrrhotite, and chalcopyrite and pentlandite. So all of this means that the area that we targeted has way more potential than what the borehole, the single borehole is showing on himself. So the next step will be to do additional exploration in that area, downhole geophysics, in order to try to figure out the core or the center of that anomaly compared to the borehole himself, and obviously additional drilling in order to go to the center of the anomaly.
And
so
to
that's
just one moment, just to go back a little bit, because before our talk, we talked about, or before the recording, we talked about the gossan that you found in 2021 that led you to stake all this ground, and then you did several surveys as well, like EM and gravity, and you drilled a number of holes at the gossan zone, which is a little bit away from here. You can talk a little bit about that in a moment. But what made you believe that drilling such a deep hole in such a target made sense, and what did define that target?
That's a very good question. I was just actually talking about the press release and the impact of the press release. But yes, the reason why we went on that area back in 2020, it was on the geological thinking, on the geological applying large scale interpretation on the area. And I selected that area because of the combination of a fold system and the high gravity anomaly associated with the stream sediment sampling that return interesting features. So that zone was a target zone for me. So I went there in 2021. I walked over the bush and we intersected the gossan right at surface. Gossan mean it's a pyroxenite with sulfides right at surface and being altered as a kind of a burn rock, if you want. That's why we call that gossan. And when you find something like this, you can be very interested with the surrounding area, because that means you have some mineralization in the system. A gossan, I don't know if you see this image, but the gossan is something like this here. You see the rock has been burned by the surface water. It looked like if a fire has been on it for years, but it's simply because the sulfides within the rock has been oxidized, and they create a cap, iron cap on top, which means that under that cap, we're gonna have the mineralization, the sulfide mineralization that we are looking at. So that was the discovery outcrop in 2021. This outcrop is actually 60 meters by almost 400 meters wide, outcropping here and there. So that was the start of the whole process of thinking of doing additional exploration on that sector. And then we flew an airborne EM survey in December 2021, outlining very good new zones. The gossan mean next to one of the high anomaly at 150 meters from surface. This is what we call the gossan zone. I drilled this. The drilling that you see, the results, are mostly from this sector here. 550 meters of continuous mineralization in this area. The north zone has not been drilled yet. It's totally virgin territory. There's no access, there's no road. So eventually I'm gonna need to create some access to be in order to drill this sector. But as you can maybe kind of suspect, you're looking at that, there is a kind of a fold there, okay? And the center of the fold, it's always interesting geologically. So that was one of the target area for me, is to look in this area, because this is the center of the fold. And this is the reason why I flew an airborne gravity survey here. And this is when we intersected the high gravity targets of the what we call the target 900. I'm flying through slides here just to show that target zone. So here it is, the Gaussian zone here with the EM response, the boreholes that we drilled, the North zone with its EM response, and the target here, the target zone 900 in the middle of the fold here, which this is a gravity target. This is EM target. And if you look at the cross section through that, if I go here, then this is the summary of the whole exploration. That's the summary of the technical presentation, if you want. A cross section east-west coming from the Gaussian near surface with this mineralized body here, with all the drilling that we have done in relation to the high gravity or denser rock associated with this satellite zone. If you look at that, this is 2.7, 2.8 gravity numbers, if you want. It's just the one of the characterization, 2.7 here. And if you look at the center of this zone here, which is very large gravity anomaly with a very strong core of a dense rock right in the middle of that, below the detection limit of an EM survey. And this is why I decided to drill this with the hole number 29. The hole 29 intersected 735 meters of pyroxenite coming from here to there, but I failed to come to the center of the anomaly because the hole did not flatten, but instead it went deeper. So I stopped the hole at 951 meters, and then we had 735 meters of pyroxenite, which is the intrusive system. But as you can see, it's only part of it because it's this is about three something kilometers wide. The core of the anomaly is about 750 meters wide, and I'm still at 250 meters from the center of that anomaly. If you look at the mineralization, the last 50 meters of that bore, something here, this is what we have. We have disseminated sulfide and sometimes highly disseminated sulfides associated with the pyroxenite. So is this mean that we have more mineralization in the core? I do hope so, but the only way to see that will be to do a downhole geophysics in order to figure out what kind of anomaly we have at the bottom, and also to do additional drilling to test this sector.
And what is the alternative? I mean, you have a big gravity anomaly, and what you're testing is if that's mineralized and potentially economic mineralization. What is the alternative? I mean, there must be. I mean, there's no guarantee, of course. So, what's the alternative? Is there another rock type that could cause this gravity anomaly? Like, what could cause this gravity anomaly if it wasn't mineralization?
Well, what will cause a gravity anomaly like this will be anything that is really dense as a rock. Massive sulfides it's got a density of about 4 to 5 compared to the usual host rock like a gneiss, which is 2.6, okay, 2.6, 2.7. So usually massive sulfide will give double gravity than a gneiss. That one possibilities. Anything else that is very dense as a rock might be a possibilities. It might be massive iron ore, but iron ore will not be associated with pyroxenite. So iron ore will be associated with banded iron formations or any other kind of a sediment like this. Here we are talking about a magmatic intrusion. So pyroxenite is already at 2.7. It is within the 2.7 outline. So it will be something denser than the pyroxenite. What exactly it will be? The only thing to know, the only way to know it is to drill it and to do downhole geophysics. There's maybe some additional possibilities. Actually, I'm not too sure how many other possibilities may be. So we need to drill it.
So you're testing whether or not this is massive sulfide or at this depth, because if you look at this anomaly, you are at 750 meters right now. That's whole length or depth?
That's a long bore hole. So the hole terminated at 951 meters, and we started intersecting the intrusive system about 200, the beginning of 200, 210, 200 something. So it's along the borehole. The center of the anomaly here, from surface, is about 750 meters as well.
What is it that you need to find here at this depth to make it work? If you find 0.5% nickel and you ultimately would find 10 million tons, it wouldn't work, I guess, at this depth.
No, not 5%, not 0.5% nickel. Ideally, we would like something like 1% nickel and 1% copper. Anything above that would be great.
And is there also a size limit? Like at these depths, I've seen the Eagle discovery by Lundin in 2015, which was very deep, but also very high grade. So it wasn't even big. I think it was only 2 or 3 or 4 million ton, but of extremely high grade. If you talk about 1% nickel, 1% copper, what type of size? I mean, the gravity anomaly is big, but I don't know if it represents potentially the size of a system, or if it just blows up because of the background signal of the pyroxenite.
Well, a couple million tons of high-grade material will do well, obviously. So it doesn't need to be extremely huge, but it's depend on the grade. So the grade is the driver here, if you want. I may just compare. I'm gonna go back in the presentation, and I will compare to some Australian discovery before. This one, Nova Bollinger in Australia. It was discovered at the beginning of 2000, and it is also fairly deep. I would say about 600 meters from surface, between 500 to 600 meters from surface, and it is within the same kind of geological environment than the Greenville province that we are dealing with in Quebec. And this one is 13 million tons at 2%. So 13 million tons at 2%, this is an absolutely beautiful deposit. And you can mine this right down to 1,000 meters from surface without no issues.
Yeah, this was a very risky drill hole in 2012, I think, where they hit 4 meters of 4% nickel, but they had this, I think, downhole EM anomaly that suggested that this was continuing at depth. And then they drilled a deeper hole, and then they had the bigger intercept. I think it was 15 or 20 meters of high-grade nickel. So you are also, you said earlier that you're going to do a downhole EM survey. What's that going to tell you exactly? And is that going to make the targeting easier? What is it going to do for you?
Well, the downhole EM survey will give me in 3 dimensions the size and the where to target the next hole in 3 dimensions. Downhole geophysics will tell me if do we have a core right in the center of this, or is the core is more here or more on top. The downhole geophysics will tell me within the area where to aim for additional mineralization.
And is that going to happen very soon? What's the timeline on doing this downhole EM, or do you need to finance to do it?
I'm planning on that downhole geophysics currently, so it might happen sooner than later.
And so do you have to keep the hole open for that? Is that something that you immediately follow up on, or do you close the hole and you do it like weeks or months later?
No, we only put a cap on the borehole, so and we washed it properly, so it should remain open.
All right. So and based on those results, which will probably take a number of weeks as well to process and then analyze, that would then lead to a follow-up drill program to test this target a bit more.
Well, first, before doing additional drilling, we need to have the authorization for additional drilling. So we apply for that at the moment. So there might be some delay waiting for the authorization for additional drilling.
Is that like really a drill permit to get new drill locations permitted?
It's a yearly type of drilling permit, yes, and you have to apply for it.
Is there a risk there, or is that certainly going to be granted, but more like a timeline risk?
Well, this is something new in Quebec province, these authorization, and it's based on the relationship that we have with stakeholder in the area. So it's going to imply some additional discussions and making sure that everybody is in phase with the drilling. So I don't expect issues, but it's a timelines of discussion and making sure that everybody is comfortable with the exploration.
Do you have to do any metallurgical work in the meantime? Because you mentioned one of those elements that you have in that borehole, but there was also pyrrhotite, chalcopyrite, and pentlandite in that hole as well. So do you have to, before you actually go and put a lot of money into this, do you want to do met work or do you do it after that?
It's already I already have quotation to do the first metallurgical test work on the core. So we already thinking about that at the moment.
Is there a reason for you to treat that as a risk, or how do you think the met work is gonna? How do you think the
no,
mineralogy?
I don't think it's a risk. It's just a matter to do it in order to characterize recovery, metallurgical recovery, and so on. So I don't think there's a risk there. We're doing detailed investigation, petrological and mineralogical determination currently. So we have a very good hands on the mineralization. So I don't think there's a risk on the mineralization at this stage.
Okay.
And the other part of the drill program, are you going to focus solely now on this target, or is the north zone of the same priority? Is the Gossan zone of the same priority? How are you looking at dividing that?
Well, we are in discussion with different group related to the zones that we are looking at. The North Zone is imply a little bit more discussion with one of the First Nation in the area, so we are looking at that. But in the time being, the target zones, the target 900 is outside of that area, so it's easier for us to process with additional work. So we're gonna probably concentrate in the target 900 zone at quickly, if you want, for the next few months or the rest of the year.
So what have you seen at the Gossan zone so far? I mean, you've seen 18 meters of 0.5% nickel and 0.5% copper. Is that something like that's not very high grade, but it's not that deep either. Does that require follow-up? Is that something that you will follow because you see a gravity anomaly below it as well? Or is that currently of lower priority?
No, it's not as low priority. I want to characterize the entire sector. So downhole geophysics and additional geophysics might be the case to do at the Gossan zone. So there's additional work there for characterization of the entire sector there. So we'll see how it goes, but for sure the target 900, where we have the whole 29, it's it's currently one of the priority for the next phase, if you want.
And the uncertainties that we currently have, like level of uncertainty around the North Zone because of access, and a level of uncertainty around the target 900 zone because you have to do some work to get permits to drill again, apparently. Can you give a bit of a timeline? I mean, otherwise investors may think, yeah, there's an issue, but there's no timeline at all. Do we have something in mind, like we want to be able to drill again at that point in the future, or are you uncomfortable to say that right now?
Well, we're going to do the downhole geophysics. That's an easy one to do. We don't need any additional permitting for that. As far as the drilling, it would be probably this fall. So,
and the fall would mean September, October-ish.
That's what I would like to, yeah.
Well, and also money. I mean, money is unfortunately still a thing. Typically, when we see stock market or stock price rise of this sort, we'd also typically see financing on the back of that. Do you have any plans to finance anytime soon?
Well, you see on the presentation, we have about $1.2 million in the bank. So $1.2 million, it's maybe comfortable right now, but obviously that can be spent fairly quickly, especially if we go for deep borehole. So we're going to need some additional money. So we are planning to do some private placement soon, actually, sooner than later, I guess. That's the way I see it.
And the 1.2 million, is that post-drill program or is that from the last financials?
No, it's currently.
Okay.
As we have right now.
Last time you financed with flow-through, partly with flow-through. Is that currently something you have in mind again, or are you looking at a different type of financing?
Flow-through is very nice for starting projects, but it's something that if you can avoid, you prefer to avoid it. If I can only do private placement for the next placement, I will be happy with that instead of doing some flow-through shares.
So ideally, sorry, go ahead, Antonio.
No, I was just going to ask, what would you prefer to do? Because I mean, do a normal private placement with a warrant in a discount to market, or flow through with a premium to market. I know there's strong opinions. There's basically two strong opinions about flow through. One of them says it's great. The other one says don't touch it. So yeah, maybe you can talk to me about that choice.
Well, the ideal situation will be a mix of both. You do a private placement and you do flow through with people that you know, and then you know that they won't dump the share 4 months after. So it's a mix of the two, and that's the ideal situation.
Isn't the ideal mix not a charity flow through where you are getting the flow through funds to buy it, but then the back end buyer to really own the share and think long term rather than think in tax break terms?
Actually, I never done any charity flow through. I understand that it's another beast by himself. If you have the right back end, that should be very, very good as well. So that might be an option at some point.
And really a little bit more general question. When you look at the nickel discoveries since the 1990s, there's almost no nickel discovery. The Nova one you just showed us is from 2012. I think Eagle that Lundin made was 2015, the Deep Eagle one at least. And then, yeah, Voisey's Bay mid-90s and Tamarack probably end of 2000s, Sakatti as well. So I probably have named 5 or 6 of them right now. And I guess that those are the only ones, aren't they? Or are there other nickel discoveries that were made recently?
Well, yes, you forget the one at Samaplu in Ivory Coast. So we made this discovery. That's why I mentioned that. We are in partnership with Ivanhoe Electric in Ivory Coast, and we just issued mineral resources and the PEA on the mineralization that we discovered in Ivory Coast. So that's another one. But yes, you're absolutely right. These nickel copper sulfide deposits are rare, very rare. And usually all the major mining house are looking for nickel copper sulfides, new discoveries. So obviously we we are focusing at communication with all the major houses as well.
Is there anything you see here at this project that you can compare to any of the bigger discoveries? I know you've referred to the Renzi mine that's 50 kilometers away from this project, but with the pyroxenite and this setting with the intrusive Nova you mentioned, that's a similar setting. Are there other comparisons, or is Nova really the perfect sort of comparison for this situation here? Not saying that you have a Nova here because that's an amazing discovery, but just the setting of it.
I think that as far as the setting himself, I think Nova Bollinger it's a good analogy because we are dealing with a highly metamorphosed host rock of the deformation age of about 1 billion years old, and so probably that's the best correlation for what we have where we are now. But obviously we can draw some other comparison with other environments as far as the intrusive himself and the way that the mineralization occur and accumulate within these intrusion. But as far as the age and the host rock, I think Nova Bollinger, it's one of the good analogy.
Is there also room? I mean, is this you have this gravity anomaly we just discussed at depth. You have other gravity anomalies that we didn't discuss today. You've got the North Zone. Is this a project that, if you don't hit it in the next program, basically an economic discovery where everybody is going to follow you and the stock will go crazy, is there like a lot of work to be done, you think, or do you think those 3 targets are the ones? How far did you already explore with your surveys and with your work so far? Is there a lot of work, generational work, to be done still?
Or regionally speaking, there's lots of work to be done in the area within, let's say, 100 radius of 100 kilometers around it. Yes, lots of work to be done. As far as the project himself in the more smaller radius, then we need to take step by step and then see how it will evolve.
Right. Okay. I guess that covers most of it. Antonio, do you have anything that you have in mind?
Nope, just mostly again interested around money timeline and how that goes forward. I think the money thing was kind of covered. And then timeline. It's basically what I'm thinking about here is how much money can I make on this? How much money it's going to cost me, and how long is it going to take for me? And I realize those are almost impossible questions, but how would you target them?
Well, I will refrain my comments on that because being a public company and a CEO, this is something it's hard for me to comment. So hopefully, we hope for the best, obviously, and the faster as possible. But things can take times, and it will take money. Obviously, it depends on with who we will partnership and how we're going to do the financing. So there's many moving items here that we don't necessarily control all of it. So it's difficult to answer about time and how big can be the reward. So this is something I cannot comment actually.
Well, hopefully we can keep getting updates on that over time. Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, just one last one. So one of the things, of course, if you would make an economic discovery, it solves a lot of problems. Then I shouldn't say it doesn't matter anymore how you got there, because most of these nickel discoveries went up 550x or sometimes 100x. So those discoveries really give big returns. But of course, what the task right now is, the technical work, but on the financial front, trying to avoid the dilution. And of course, the share price right now is helping you a bit because you went from 9 cents to 30, and I don't know where we are right now exactly, but how much do you need to raise really? Because we didn't ask that question yet. Of course, ideally you have you act like a major, where you can drill almost like an unlimited number of holes to test your thesis. But that's not the case with juniors. So what is sort of the
Exactly.
ideal mix of how much do you need to raise, how many holes do you want to drill to properly test it in the next program, so that you don't just run out of money to make that final hole that you need to do when you are in the field in October?
Well, you know, market cap, it's about $7 to $8 million. Okay, we have 28 million shares outstanding. I will say 45%, 50% of it, it's tightly owned or tightly controlled by Ivanhoe Electric, MMG, and management. So we will raise enough money to be meaningful to our capital structure. So it will be something that is normally in line with that. So and with that money, we're gonna do the holes that will be needed to maximize the return of it. So I don't need to drill 20 holes in order to figure out what we have over there. So it doesn't need that many holes to have a good return if the return is there. So we'll see after that the next phase of work.
All right.
Well, I don't have any additional questions. Is there anything else that we are forgetting to ask you here at the end, Marc-Antoine?
No, I think the people should realize that this is a new discovery. We are a small company, obviously. We're gonna maximize the use of every dollars that we have in a very very dedicated use of it for geological discovery and economic discovery. So I think this system should reveal himself over the next few phases of exploration, and hopefully we're gonna find what we want to find there.